part 2 on the topic of practicing, how to practice. So I wanted to talk about the concept of practice boxes. I call them practice boxes with my students typically, but it's really just a fancy way of saying that if something's difficult in your piece, you practice it extra, all right? Many times when you go through a piece, there are going to be spots that are so easy, you just play it correctly the first time and it's no problem. But then there will be those spots that are so difficult that it takes maybe even like a month to learn it and to play it properly. So music is always like that. It's always a big, mixed bag. And so it doesn't make sense to practice a piece from top to bottom, constantly over and over and over. And there are certain students who always do that. They just run it, and that's what they consider to be practicing. But you'll see, major clues to a student who does that. You can see it in their playing, and so certain parts might get better a little bit, but many parts just keep on breaking down, and those are the tricky parts. So I wanted to give an example. I couldn't decide which Seitz Concerto in Suzuki Book 4, but I think I'm going to try the second one in the book. That's the Concerto number 5, and it's the first movement. It starts out like this. This theme, they're all nice. I always have my students check out all 3 Seitz concertos, and the one that they think is most interesting, that's the one that we start with. And if I feel like they've learned enough, then I have them move on. If not, we'll learn another Seitz concerto. So I like this example because there are a few tricky spots, like just in the first 3 lines. Let's say I'm looking at measure 15 to 30. Okay, that's, I would say, the first section, because 30 has triplets, so that's a little bit tricky as well. But anyway, in the first 3 lines, I would say the tricky spot is measure 23, because it has this B sharp. So instead of playing B natural, we're going to have a raised one, a high one, followed by a second finger on C sharp. So it's going to have... And then right after, you have to put your one back into the regular spot. So that's a little bit tricky. I don't think it's hugely tricky, but definitely need to look at that, especially if the student hasn't done too many high ones. Now, the next part that I always have my students just block it off, right, is 30. That entire line is triplets. So I have them learn even just the first 2 measures, even if you'd like to, right? So just slowly... And I'm always a fan of doing +1 or plus a few more. So if you're playing a section, you can go on a few notes more, because that way we're connecting it and we're not constantly stopping. Okay, that way if we practice a section, it's good to overlap a bit, overlap, and that way it's not a problem when we go and connect all the sections together again. So that is a really good spot to practice. Now the bottom of this page, this is actually why I chose this Seitz concerto, because the bottom gets tricky, and so does the next page at the top. So a good place to practice would be maybe starting from 43, right? That's a practice box. Then another place is 49. So let's just say our practice box is 43. So right, so let's take it up to there. So this one's tricky because it has a high 2 and then a low 2 and then a regular 1. So we need to get that those fingers close together. And then it has a high 2 and then a low 2, right? Sometimes even that is enough. Just close the box there. So your practice box is 2 measures long, right? Even 1 measure, you could just practice 1 measure if this is tricky. if that's tricky. So you tailor it, right, to your needs, right? Whatever's tricky for you, you make that practice box like that. And then you can make multiple practice boxes, but the point of a practice box is to treat it individually, right? So if you're just passing right through it, there's really no point. So just keep within the practice box, right? And then, or if you want to overlap a couple notes, that's fine, right? And add a couple extra notes. But just stay within there over and over and over until you really begin to familiarize yourself with it. And then the other one, 45, right? That's not too bad because first finger, it's not too bad to play regular first finger and then a low first finger. The part that most kids, because they never seen anything like this before, where they get a little stumped is 49. So I would say just do 49, or you can do 49, 50, and 51. All right, so here's 49, 3 measures from 49. And then you could just overlap a little there, all right? So first of all, putting the accent up at the top. So first put the third finger down first, so that we're not doing it like this. So, sometimes the third finger could be late. So put the finger down first. And it's good to get these articulations into. So slur, and then staccato, and then put the finger down. Then the bow does this A string, E string, right? And try to put the accent on the top. And then low one, regular one. So even practicing that back and forth. I like to always do the reverse. So you can do that. Even though the reverse doesn't exist in the piece, I really think playing the reverse is very helpful in most situations, okay? So then we go back. All right, I'm going super fast just for the sake of keeping this video interesting and not too long, right? But I would spend quite a bit of time slowly with my student during the lesson doing that, okay? And then the next one, again, scooting the first finger, right? So, and then staccato, and then play one more note just to connect. All right, so once you get the hang of it, then you can, just practice one measure at a time. And once you get the hang of it, you could practice 3 measures at a time, very slowly. Think about which one it is, because usually students get a little confused. So this is the one that has the 1 and the 2, right? And then finger down first. Now this is the low 1 scooting business. And then the next one, it's the E string, low 1, regular 1. And put the 2 nice and low there. You wanna tuck that in. All right. The next practice box sometimes is like 54 or 57. So 54 is. That's 54, and then 57 is. Many times kids get that one wrong because the slur makes it tricky. So pineapple. So think about a pineapple being inside of the quarter note. So pineapple. So the finger needs to wait. All right, it's tricky because if we're in a slur, the finger needs to wait, and then the finger defines the rhythm, and most of the time kids rush. All right, so be careful. Again, pay attention to the note length. Eighth note, and then quarter note, right? This next bit isn't too bad. There are a few tricky moments here, but to see how I'm kind of going through and seeing where the tough spots are. Then, of course, I have the student kind of like pre-study all these 16th notes. So this is measure 79, right? This section, it's really, really, really tricky. because of the overlap bowing. This is like what I call an overlap bowing. It's really not the bowing that's overlapping, it's the fingers and the note patterns that are overlapping. So it's tricky to slur in the last note of the repetition to the next note change. So so this is tricky. So I just always have them, take the slurs out, just play very, easy. Separate bow practice because it helps the brain to concentrate on one note at a time, and that way you're not having any, you're having hopefully fewer note mistakes, right? Pitch mistakes. If you try and do everything at once, typically, sharps will become naturals, naturals will become sharps, and things get a little bit mixed up. So I think that's a great way to do it. And then 87. This is a little bit off topic, but I would go ahead and practice the bow by itself, right? You want to recognize patterns. I use patterns so much when I'm learning my own music and when I'm teaching. And it looks really complicated here, but it's really just... And then the bow is the fingers are changing. So it's really not a complicated thing here, but it looks a little bit scary. So... And again, here you want to leave the 1 down and then take the 3 off, put it down, take the 3 out, put it down. And then this is just double stop. But if the student's not used to it, then we need to practice these double stops slowly and carefully. So also the very end is a good practice box because these double stops usually are a little scary for people who aren't used to it. Right? Again, right here, keep your first finger on D string and A string. You see? So instead of looking at 1 note at a time, I'm looking at 2 notes at a time. So the first 2 eighth notes, they're a pair, right? See how my finger's not doing anything? And then the next 2, my finger's ready for all of it, right? So the next 2, see my fingers, and then the next 2, right? And then my finger just hops across. All right, so a lot of it is just knowing how to, maneuver your fingers in an efficient manner. So anyway, I kind of touched on a few other topics, but practice boxes, that's really the best way to go. As we get older and, professional musicians, we find that, with life and everything and job and everything, it's difficult to find that personal practice time. So when we do carve out that personal practice time, we make it count, okay? So sometimes I only have a certain set amount of time, but I have to learn this much stuff. And so I find the fastest way to learn things, the most efficient way. So practice boxes, really, really, really great. And once you've practiced, like if something's 20 times harder than the rest of it, you should probably practice it 20 times more, right? It's a really basic concept, but sometimes we don't think about it. So anything that looks harder than the rest, you practice that extra. And once you've done all of that, you practice this spot, you practice that spot, that spot, that spot, and then you try running everything and you start getting used to running everything. You find that it wasn't like all the easy stuff sounds this good and the hard stuff sounds this bad, right? It's not this huge discrepancy anymore. Actually, all the difficult spots have risen up to meet the easy stuff. So then maybe there's only this much gap. Sorry, you can't see because my bow. So sometimes there's only this much difference. So that means you just need to hit those tricky spots a little bit more over and over and over and over, and then they're going to rise up and meet the other spots that sound already very terrific. Okay, so hopefully we work on that concept, and I hope that makes your practice time even more fruitful and fun, right? It takes a lot of concentration just doing that, and really when you do the practice box, let's say start doing it by like doing it 7 times, or start out with like 10 times. If it's really hard, start out 20 times, and by the 20th time you're gonna really see good results, and then you're gonna feel like just time has just flown by because you're trying to get that spot learned, right? And you're seeing a very quick, progression, like good progress, right? So anyway, happy practicing.